Welcome back to Lantern Insights. It's been a couple days since the last video came out. Bit of a delay there, just dealing with some real life things. Obviously a bit busy, but the lantern train continues. Be more videos in the next week. Don't worry about that. We got a double header here. Going to be showcasing two games with an angled loofah version of Lantern. He got a couple 5-0s with it last year around August time, and I thought I'd give it a test just to see how it was doing today. You know, in this current meta, as obviously it was a lot different a little while ago. We're playing cards like Wrenn and Six, kind of more of a Jund shell, and so it's just going to talk through a couple games, kind of give my thoughts on that list. One thing that I really struggled with was Prismatic Vista. Kind of get the purpose of it with all the blood moons running around, and it can get all three of your colors, but it made a lot of hands quite awkward. Not so much this hand yet, but the ones where you draw you have two colored, specifically when you had two colored spells and Urza Saga, I found Prismatic Ending to be very, very awkward. Our opponent leads on a Tron land. We do have this Ghost Quarter in hand, which is going to be somewhat useful, especially if we can find a Wrenn. And when we take a look at their hand, we see that they have kind of all green ways of digging for cards, and then Karn the Great Creator. So we're going to elect to take them off of Karn. If they play Saga, yes, it can get Expedition Map in a few turns, but we'll have a plan for that by then. And obviously we don't want to let them have Karn. It's one of their best cards against us. Here, like I talked about with Prismatic Vista, we had to get the black for Thoughtseize, but it does mean that we don't have access to green for Boseiju, which is something that we would want in a situation like this. And so here we're gonna just play out Lantern Shredder, establish the full lock. We did give them a land that will tap for colored mana, but we don't have to worry about that super soon. Importantly here, we do have a Surgical on top, but Power Plant is the Tron land they already have, so we're looking for an Urza's Mine. If we can mill one of those, we will be in pretty good shape, or if we use Ghost Quarter to destroy a land, we can then Surgical it, but we'll likely go for that on our next turn, as we do want the pressure from the constructs, as this is a hand without bridge. Sorry, we elect to Surgical right away, grabbing the Karn. They did have that one unknown that we didn't know about, and I think I decided that it was just Karn in hand was kind of their only really problematic thing that they could have, and so I just wanted to kind of go for the lower downside risk, and it did actually end up paying off as they had a Karn in hand. Yeah, sorry for the misremembering it slightly, but so we take out all their Karns. We do get a good look at their list. Fairly standard Tron things. We're going to be able to beat down pretty efficiently here, as we should. With Saga here, obviously nothing that we've done has been like super different from regular Lantern, where we like the Wrenn and Six. I mean, we can't even cast it here, so it's not even that useful. But that is one thing that I find with a lot of kind of new, different versions of Lantern, where just relying on you have those games where you really use the new tech cards, like something like Wrenn and Six, and it can really shine. But then you also have that games like this one where just the classic Lantern plan, no kind of nothing fancy, just almost like a back to basics kind of version of Lantern. They elect to make the construct on their upkeep, obviously not quite optimal, but I do let them draw the Worm Coil. Maybe not the best idea, but I'm pretty solid with the lock here. Can always use Inventor's Fair to go get bridge, and they're not going to have access to Tron, as I'll be able to use Ghost Quarter to keep them off it. So I think they were just kind of worse cards that I could let through there, so I elected to let them have the worm coil. Maybe not totally correct, but we do get pretty good pressure here. And we have the Thoughtseize on top, which can also take care of it as well. As we have all the pressure here. Like, they're dead next turn if they can't find a way to answer both of our constructs. So we're able to take the worm coil. They're gonna have double Ancient Stirrings, but need a pretty specific set of cards in order to come back from that. And we have the Ghost Quarter up, so they do get the Urza's Mine, but we'll be able to blow up the tower on their draw step. You'll notice because they had a card on top that wasn't bad for us, we wait until their draw step in order for them to draw it and then use the Ghost Quarter. If you use the Ghost Quarter earlier, you're basically just giving them a free shuffle, and they concede here as they don't have any way of stopping the constructs. We didn't get to see a ton of the new, well, I don't know if I should call it a new list if this deck was doing well before the channel started. Didn't get to see a ton of the new tech, but don't worry, we'll see it in the next couple of games. Obviously, they take the play. In terms of sideboarding, with playing copies of Karn in the deck, there isn't a ton of sideboarding to do with this list, and I wasn't totally comfortable. We brought in like Necromentia, things like that, but the sideboarding kind of not a total 100% way of doing that. I think this hand is pretty reasonable. Obviously, Inquisition would be slightly better as Thoughtseize, just being able to take anything. Inquisition, obviously only hitting the early things is a bit of a drawback, but we have Saga, Full Lock, Karn. It's going to be kind of slow coming down, but still good eventually. We do draw a Bridge, which can help minimize. We don't have to worry about things like Worm Coil as much. We do Thoughtseize and see that they have Karn Liberated in hand, which we're not able to answer. However, they are a few turns away from assembling Tron. Don't actually have a direct plan to do that. So they pop the map to get a mine, which could mean they have a tower in hand, or it could mean that they have, it's just the first one they're getting. We do get a bit punished here for fetching the swamp with the Verdant Catacombs, as we're not able to play our Wrenn and Six out and won't be able to for a few turns. I don't think it matters a ton here, as we're likely going for the Pixis anyway. We Pixis to get rid of Karn, and they are drawing another mine, and because that's the one they tutored for, we're happy to let them draw that. They're going to make a Saga. I guess it's easier for them to just F6 through the turns. Obviously, holding it up is probably correct. So they're going to go get an artifact. Obviously, we're going to make sure that we do our activated abilities first. You don't want to get got by them getting a Pithing Needle. I would be somewhat surprised if Tron had a needle that they came out with. Obviously, something like Haywire Might is a much more reasonable target for Tron to have. Although importantly, their only green mana is Cascading Cataracts. However, we are obviously going to have to answer that here. But Wrenn and Six is really going to forget if we use Wrenn and Six to ping down the Haywire Might or if we use Karn. So we get a needle naming Karn Liberated, which they have in their hand, and they are going to be able to cast next turn. They have enough mana for it. And what was our... so we crack the Vista. We use Wrenn and Six. I think you definitely also could have used Karn there. It's probably a bit more mana efficient if we jammed Karn. But here, again, our construct is significantly bigger than theirs. They're Karn Liberated, obviously can't do anything. And then from here, it's just kind of maintaining the lock. We do have Bridge, so we don't really care about the construct too much. Sylvan Scrying, grabbing Beseiju, being able to hit this Pithing Needle is pretty good for them, as it will give them access to Karn Liberated, which is very powerful. However, So we do find a Galvanic Blast, which does... No, we still mill it. You could make an argument to keeping the blast and then kind of giving them one activation of Karn, but that kind of requires them to tick down, and so if they tick up, then obviously you're in pretty bad shape. So here we're going to play out Lantern and play out Karn. One thing, in the sideboard there were no copies of Pithing Needle. So if you look here, the closest thing we can get is a Sorcerer's Spyglass, which unfortunately won't be in time to answer Karn Liberated, as we know, even if we hadn't played that Lantern, we'd only have one mana up. Yeah, here, from this point, like against Tron, obviously not a favored matchup, but when you get in situations like this, I think it is, like, closing the game is pretty reasonable against them. Obviously depends on kind of what their draws are, what kind of lines they go for, and because they downtick, like, we're going to be able to kill it with our construct token, which is obviously one of the best parts of having the constructs. And then from here it's just kind of Wrenn, Urza Saga loops. We do forget to tick up Wrenn. We should be grabbing back a second Saga, but it won't be too relevant in this game. Another important thing to note with Expedition Map, if they were to go get Blast Zone, they can't put Blast Zone on 0 because it comes in with 1 counter. So you don't have to worry about it as much in this scenario where we're quite far ahead with the constructs, and so just creating more constructs would still get around Blast Zone. Anyway, we take this one 2-0 off Tron, which I think was a pretty good performance for the deck. Obviously, Tron being one of our harder matchups. However, we were able to show, like, you are sort of able to fight through it. It can be hard, like, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't count on too many wins with this. I was trying to find, I did, if we're going to look at some of the downsides of this deck, I did lose a game with Tron, but I didn't like play it all the way out, and so it wasn't a great replay. I kind of conceded decently quickly, so I won't be showing it here, but just know that it's not all sunshine and roses against Tron. Whereas there are a lot of games where you kind of draw the wrong half of the deck, and I'll probably come out with a video tomorrow on some of the downsides of this version. Obviously I'm going to start with the good matches, and then we'll move on to some of the problems later. But I mean, performed quite well against Tron. Now this is kind of the more traditional GTron. However, we also came up against Eldrazi Tron, so let's get into that match now. Well, one thing that I find that's really great about Lantern is just the possibility for innovation, kind of how many different versions of the deck there are. You can play so many different things. There are really a lot of cards that you can make work very easily. Well, maybe not very easily, but that you can try. There's so many kind of flexible directions to go. It's not one solved archetype. And so I always like showing off kind of new versions. Make sure to stay tuned for Friday. There's going to be a very exciting version playing almost 20 creatures in Lantern. That's all the spoiler you'll get for now, but 20 creatures in Lantern is pretty unheard of. This hand here, I think it illustrates some of the problems with this deck where you have more utility lands, which can make some of your early turns a bit harder. It has a stronger late game sometimes when you're able to recur something like Buried Ruin every turn with Wrenn and Six, but with this hand, you can't cast Inquisition, you can't cast Trophy, just not a great hand overall. And then here we have 2 Sagas, but no Shredder, no other pieces of the Mill Rock, or of the lock, no bridge, and even Karn, we're not going to be able to cast it on turn 4 if we're forced to play Saga on turn 1, as that Saga will sacrifice on turn 3, and so I don't think it's worth keeping this hand either. Unfortunately, our 5 is somewhat reasonable. We change slightly which lands we keep here. We have Lantern, Ensnaring Bridge, and they lead on Urza Saga into Chalice on 0. I don't know exactly what they're on yet. Chalice is quite common in Eldrazi Tron lists. We do see Karn the Great Creator on top, which is obviously a very problematic card for us. However, if they are a bit slow getting it out, we will be able to put a decent amount of pressure on it with this Saga. Seeing the Tron land plus Dismember is basically a lock that it's Eldrazi Tron at this point. And we do see a Codex Shredder on top. Not super great. We need all the One Ring. In hindsight, I think this is a bit inaccurate. It's not a super common card in Eldrazi Tron, but I think at the time I was not totally aware that it was that version of Tron. As you know, Green Tron playing Chalice of the Void isn't unheard of. It is something that can happen, especially with so many Cascade decks running around. It wouldn't shock me if a Green Tron player put Chalice in the sideboard. Wouldn't be the craziest thing I had ever seen. But as we see the Matter Reshaper and the Swamp, like, this is definitely Eldrazi Tron. Kind of regretting this Pithing Needle here, but it is what it is. Against Eldrazi Tron, usually something like Karn the Great Creator is a pretty good name. They do have access to Dismember, which will be able to kill one construct token. However, we're going to be able to make 3. A bit unfortunate that we drew the second Saga before, as having to play it right away, meaning that we're not able to get a full 4 constructs out of our Sagas. And it actually is going to be hard for us to get 3 as we don't have that other land. We are kind of forced to make another one because we know they have Karn in hand, and this one's going to die to their Dismember. So we know 2 of their cards right now are Karn and Dismember. Obviously they use the Dismember. But importantly, they don't have Tron, meaning they're not able to use Karn, down ticket, play something else all in the same turn. And we do put that second needle on Karn the Great Creator, as they're going to be able to resolve it next turn. And yes, it's going to shut down some of our artifacts, but if they take their full turn here, spend 4 mana, play Karn, we're able to immediately kill it with the construct token, and then we'll be in good shape. So I think it's just an easy needle. Additionally, we have 2 Shredders in hand, so we can maintain a pretty strong lock once we get it going. So they're gonna tap some of their mana for a Karn. I mean, obviously Karn, even like just its static ability is very strong against Lantern. Obviously puts us fairly a little bit behind, but they don't have anything to follow it up, meaning that we are able to just kind of float mana here. Grab Shredder. We do Thoughtseize, as we know there's kind of other things that they can have in hand, and we do want to ensure that we can kind of have a clean lock once we do get it, as we actually haven't looked at their hand at all this game. And here I do take the Emrakul, which may be a bit surprising to some people, but here we can kill the Karn, and then if they want to play another one, like they can play Urza Saga, make constructs to chump block before they play Karn, but it kind of relies on them drawing very well. I think it is the right choice here, as we want to put a bit more pressure on them. However, and they will be able to get to Emrakul pretty quickly. They're already up to 8 mana. Mine is going to give them 9, and then it's costing 4 less already. So like they're going to play Emrakul next turn, and I guess you can make the argument that it's not terrible, Emrakul. I don't know, there's not a ton that they can do with it beyond just like sacrificing Lantern, but I think in general, especially without Bridge and without enough lands to cast Bridge, I don't want to give them access to a big 13/13 flyer here. But like we talked about, we're going to kill this Karn. This Ancient Stirrings, we're basically going to be forced to get a land with it, as we are still down to 1 land. However, we can pressure them pretty quickly, and they do elect to concede here. There is probably a little bit of more room where they could have played it out a little bit, but they elected not to, and that's totally fine. We will try to get them in game 2. Well, on the draw for game 2, and I think our hand here is fairly sketchy. Obviously not a super solid keep. I can see a pretty good argument for sending it back. We're likely leading on Shredder and then Inquisition on turn 2 with the Gardens. Ensnaring Bridge, because this is Eldrazi Tron, Ensnaring Bridge is a lot more important against them than it is against GTron. And Ether Grid can be useful if they get something like a Karn. However, they do mulligan basically into Oblivion. Not quite. I guess they're only down to 4, and they are Tron, so that's not totally unreasonable. However, we do pull a Thoughtseize here, which is going to be pretty key. However, they do have the Chalice on 1. This quite obviously is far from ideal, as we don't have an answer to it in hand. Importantly, there are answers in the deck to it, just not in our hand at the time. We mill blindly with Shredder here. We're playing Surgical Extraction, and so being able to hit a Tron land or Karn the Great Creator would be very nice if we're able to draw it, and they don't really have any good ways of recursion. And we do mill the One Ring, which kind of vindicates our needle on it from game 1, showing that they do actually have it in their list. So they're going to pop the map, grab a mine, which does mean they could have access to Tron as early as next turn. I don't know for sure if they have it in their hand, but it's not outside the world of possibility. Because of this Chalice, we are going to kind of be more focused on the constructs, as we don't have an answer to it right now. And they do have a Dismember, so they are able to kill one construct, which does mean it's going to be harder to pressure their problematic cards. And we grab a Lantern to complete kind of a fragile lock, but it is one that we're able to get under Chalice, which is very important. That is kind of one of another added benefit of Saga. Kind of what makes it so good is that a card like Chalice, traditionally you just wouldn't be able to get a Lantern onto the battlefield. However, with Saga, I guess you could with Whir, but with Saga specifically, you're able to get there. This Matter Reshaper, obviously it's not a huge threat, but it's not like we do have to be careful of when we let it die, kind of knowing what's on top. We do see a Wrenn and Six on top, which is going to be very strong for us if we're able to get it down. As just being able to recur those sagas is a way of strengthening the lock without having to go through Chalice. And we do get a bit lucky here where they are kind of a bit land flooded. Obviously we're going to take the Matter Reshaper hit. We are ahead on life. They don't have any, they're not giving it lifelink or anything like that. We can use Ether Grid to shoot, deal a bit of extra damage. However, they play Walking Ballista on 2. It's just going to mean next turn we are going to, you'll see how we get rid of the Ballista here. But we shoot them for 1 with the Ether Grid. Inventor's Fair, obviously a card that I'm a lot lower on than I was at times, not that long ago. However, I don't think it's really great now. Yes, I mean, theoretically you could be able to recur it with Wrenn and Six here, but not totally. So here we are going to play Bridge. I think this isn't a game that we're going to win with constructs. The main benefit of Saga is just going to be getting things under Chalice. So we hit it for 1 with the Ether Grid, and then we're able to just use the Wrenn to ping it for the other one. It does let them ping Wrenn down to 1. However, 1 is still alive. We don't really care about the ultimate in a deck like this. We don't. Yeah, you can loop Thoughtseizes forever, but that's not really the same level of strength as decks playing like Bolt. We do have Galvanic Blast, but not kind of really what the deck's built around. and they do have an answer to Wrenn and Six with their All is Dust. However, that does empty their hand, meaning I think from here we're in a pretty good spot. All their cards like Reality Smasher, Thought Not Seer are just kind of totally dead here. I do think we'd make a mistake not casting the Inquisition here. Because the Matter Reshaper has 3 power, we should have cast the Inquisition into the Chalice, got it countered, and then the Shaper wouldn't have been able to attack. We would have. It doesn't end up mattering a ton. Like we're at a life total where we can take the 3 damage from the Reshaper if they were to attack. However, obviously you want to play correct as when you can. So having a fetch lands does kind of allow you to control the top of your library a bit. It is one advantage. They're more or less playing fetch lands now. I think Philosopher's been on them a lot. Oh, he conceded here, as we're just gonna be able to get Wrenn back, kind of mill Saga every turn, or use Wrenn and then Inventor's Fair every turn. A lot of things you can do, kind of like I was talking about. Wrenn and Six, very late game card, providing that extra value at the end, despite the color hurdles early, which isn't always Wrenn and Six. Obviously, it's very common to see it turn 2 in Modern, but often in our deck it does its best work later in the game in this position. Here, like we totally have them locked. They're drawing lands. We have multiple mill rocks. Like we play Wrenn, tick up, get Urza Saga, play Urza Saga. Just every 2 turns we're getting a new mill rock. Game over from here. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed these 2 matches. Should be back to regular content now, a bit less busy, trying to be more regular, and don't forget to stay tuned for Friday. Fun list coming up. Anyway, take care, and I will see you in the next one.